Hello everyone, hope you're all safe and well. Welcome to this program, Read Your Bible Through in a Year. And today we are going to start the new book, that's the fourth book in the Old Testament called the Numbers. And we are on day 52. We will be starting the new book in the Old Testament called the Book of Numbers, also called as the fourth book of Moses. And in the New Testament, we will be still reading the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 3, verses 1 through to 19. Before we begin today's reading, just a quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed for your for this channel, please do subscribe, and also don't forget to click on the bell icon so you will receive the notifications and reminder. And also, if you have missed any of the previous days explanations, you can always click on the link on the top right hand corner of the YouTube screen, and you will be able to go back and listen to my explanations. Okay, let's go to the readings. Today we will be reading from the book of Numbers, chapter 1 and chapter 2. So since we are beginning the new book, I want to give an explanation about this book, insight into this book. So the book of Numbers is named because it records several occasions when the Israelites were counted or numbered. In chapter 1 there's a count, and chapter 3, chapter 4, and also chapter 26. And also it gives in the Hebrew, the starting letter is in the wilderness. The starting word in the Hebrew text says it is the in the wilderness. So about 40 years of the wilderness experience is covered in this book. The people enjoyed God's blessing and protection when they obeyed Him, that we read in Numbers chapter 21, but their disobedience always brought them judgment in the book of Numbers chapter 25. So despite the wonders that God performed on Israel's behalf, the people regretted leaving Egypt on several occasions. So they thought that we should have been in Egypt and not come out. So the fourth book of Moses covers a large portion of 40 years the Israel spent in the wilderness. During this time, God removed the entire generation that had earlier failed to trust Him, except for Joshua and Caleb, and molded the new generation into a unified nation prepared to conquer the land He had promised. Now it starts like this: the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai. So it is in the Sinai and in the tent of meeting. So that means to say God spoke with Moses almost 1 month after the construction of the tabernacle was complete, and 1 year and 15 days after the original Passover, the Israel began their journey from Egypt. And also the book of Numbers, as the name suggests, records the taking of two important censuses or the numbering of Israel. The first census was taken just before when they left Mount Sinai, because their intention was to conquer the Canaan immediately. But unfortunately, the people sinned at Kadesh Barnea and had to spend a total of 40 years in the wilderness, and until all the men who rebelled against God had died. The event in this passage was the military census, the first census, counting only the male who were least 20 years old. The second census was taken some 30 years later, that is in the book of Numbers chapter 26. So the first chapter we will read the entire census of all the people, and the chapter 2 it continues the census and also the arrangements of the tribal campus around. That is what we read in chapter 2. In chapter 3, the counting of Levites. So that is what we read in the first 3 chapters. So the first 3 chapters is mostly about the counting, how many people in each of the tribes, so and how they were placed. The arrangement of the tribal in the camp is what is mentioned. So when they settled in the camp, how each of the tribes had to be kept. I want you to focus on which tribe on the east, which tribe on the south, which on the west, and etc. So I want you to read on that. So chapter 1 and 2, especially the chapter 1 gives each of the tribes and how they are counted, and chapter 2 the arrangement of each of the tribes in the camp is what we read in chapter 2. Now, coming to the the New Testament, chapter 3 in the book of Gospel according to Mark, chapter 3, as I told you, as we already read in the introduction to the Gospel according to Mark, it's a very short Gospel, and Mark had written this Gospel for those people who lived in the area outside Jesus' ministry. So he doesn't explain all the teachings of Jesus, rather only the instances, very important instances. Today we are going to read Mark chapter 3 verses 1 through to 29. Now, here we see that chapter 3 starts with Jesus going into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal. Jesus said to them, "A man with a shriveled hand, stand up in front of everyone, which is lawful on the day of Sabbath to do," etc. Then also the crowd follows Jesus. You can read the same similar instances in the Gospel according to Matthew and Luke, but in the Gospel of Matthew, this particular instance comes only in chapter 12, and in Luke it comes in chapter 6. But here, just in chapter 3, we read about this. Then also in chapter 3, verses 13, we read about appointing the 12 apostles. Now, he doesn't go how these people are selected, etc., etc. He gives the list, which we read in Matthew in chapter 10, in Luke chapter 6. But here, just in chapter 3, we already read about the appointment of the apostles. So here we are today in day 52, starting a new book, the fourth book of Moses. That's the Numbers, and how that book of Numbers is formed, and Mark chapter 3 verses 1 through to 19. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned. Tomorrow we will continue with the book of Exodus and the Gospel according to Mark, and until then, stay safe, take care, God bless, goodbye.